Do you ever wonder why some of your closest relationships feel subtly toxic, why certain friends seem supportive on the surface, but you sense an underlying tension you can't quite identify? Jung discovered that intuitive and introspective personalities often become magnets for a specific type of psychological envy that operates completely in the shadows. Before we dive into these 8 revealing signs that Jung identified, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. This content requires deep psychological research and understanding, and your support helps me continue bringing you these profound insights that can protect your mental health and relationships. Carl Jung spent decades studying human personality and discovered something deeply disturbing about how certain psychological types interact with each other. He found that people with highly developed intuition and introspection, those who naturally see beneath the surface of things, often attract a particular kind of envy that is far more dangerous than obvious jealousy because it masquerades as friendship. This isn't about simple jealousy over material possessions or achievements. This is about something much deeper and more psychological. Jung identified that intuitive personalities possess certain qualities that trigger profound insecurity in others, qualities that some people desperately want but cannot develop within themselves. And when people cannot attain what they secretly desire, they often resort to subtle sabotage disguised as care and concern. Think about your own relationships for a moment. How many times have you shared an exciting opportunity or personal breakthrough with someone you trusted, only to feel deflated after the conversation? How many times has someone close to you responded to your success with comments that felt supportive, but left you feeling somehow diminished? How many times have you noticed that certain friends seem to have an uncanny ability to plant seeds of doubt right when you're feeling most confident? Jung understood that this wasn't coincidence. He discovered that people with strong intuitive functions often develop a kind of psychological radar that allows them to see potential, to understand complex patterns, and to navigate life in ways that appear almost magical to others. This ability creates both admiration and resentment in those who feel stuck in more conventional ways of thinking and being. These intuitive types possess what Jung called the gift of seeing beyond the veil. They can sense the deeper currents running beneath surface interactions. They can perceive potential outcomes before they manifest. They can understand the hidden motivations driving people's behavior. They can recognize patterns that others miss completely. This psychological sophistication is both a blessing and a curse, because it makes them incredibly valuable as friends and advisors, but it also makes them targets for a specific type of envy. The people who envy these qualities are often those who feel trapped in conventional thinking patterns, who struggle to understand their own emotions, who feel disconnected from their intuitive wisdom, or who have learned to suppress their natural psychological gifts in order to fit into societal expectations. When they encounter someone who has maintained access to these deeper psychological functions, they experience a complex mixture of attraction and resentment. The first sign Jung identified is what he called the backhanded compliment pattern. This is when someone consistently gives you praise that contains a subtle poison. They might say things like, "You're so lucky to be naturally intuitive. I wish I didn't have to work so hard to understand people." Or, "It must be nice to be so confident in your weird ideas." Or, "I could never be as impractical as you, but I guess it works for some people." On the surface, these sound like compliments, but they're actually designed to make you feel guilty for your natural gifts, or to suggest that your insights aren't earned through genuine wisdom. Jung noticed that these comments often contain implicit assumptions that your abilities are somehow undeserved, that you haven't worked for them, or that they represent character flaws rather than strengths. The psychological purpose of these backhanded compliments is to create cognitive dissonance in your mind. They want you to start questioning whether your gifts are actually valuable, whether you deserve the insights you receive, or whether you should tone down your natural abilities to make others more comfortable. Jung understood that this is a form of psychological warfare designed to get you to self-sabotage your own development. Jung noticed that envious friends have a particular talent for making your strengths sound like character flaws. They'll frame your depth as overthinking, your intuition as impracticality, your independence as selfishness, your high standards as being too picky, your sensitivity as weakness, or your creativity as unrealistic dreaming. They've mastered the art of making you question the very qualities that make you unique and valuable. The second sign is the energy vampire effect. Jung observed that certain people seem to feed off the emotional and creative energy of intuitive types. These friends always come to you with their problems, always need your insight and guidance, always want you to help them process their emotions or figure out their life direction. But notice something crucial: they never seem to actually implement your advice, and they never reciprocate when you need support. This isn't about normal friendship, give and take. This is about someone who has unconsciously identified you as a source of the psychological nutrients they lack within themselves. They don't want to develop their own intuition or emotional intelligence. They want to siphon yours. And Jung discovered that this dynamic can literally drain the life force from highly sensitive and intuitive people. These energy vampires often become addicted to the clarity and insight you provide. They'll create crisis after crisis, drama after drama, confusion after confusion, all designed to keep you engaged in solving their problems and providing the psychological nourishment they refuse to cultivate within themselves. Jung noticed that these people often have an uncanny ability to sense when you're pulling back or setting boundaries, and they'll escalate their neediness to pull you back into the dynamic. The third sign Jung identified is the subtle sabotage pattern. This is perhaps the most insidious because it's so difficult to pinpoint. These friends have a remarkable ability to undermine your confidence or derail your progress in ways that seem accidental or well-intentioned. They might consistently interrupt you when you're sharing something important, change the subject when you're getting positive attention, or offer unsolicited advice that creates confusion rather than clarity. They might suggest that you're moving too fast with a new relationship, taking too big a risk with a career change, or being too optimistic about a creative project. Their concerns always sound reasonable and caring, but Jung noticed that these interventions consistently happen right when you're building momentum or feeling particularly aligned with your path. Jung discovered that this sabotage often operates through what he called the voice of false wisdom. These friends position themselves as the voice of reason, the practical one, the one who's just looking out for your best interests. But if you pay attention to the pattern, you'll notice that their advice consistently leads you away from your authentic path and toward more conventional, safer, smaller choices that keep you operating below your full potential. The fourth sign is what Jung called projection reversal. Normal projection is when someone attributes their own qualities to others. But envious friends do something more sophisticated. They project their own limitations onto you while simultaneously claiming your strengths as their own. They might tell mutual friends that they gave you the idea for your latest project, or they might describe your intuitive insights as things they taught you, or they might claim that your emotional intelligence comes from their influence in your life. This is particularly crazy-making because it makes you question your own memory and perception. You know these claims aren't true, but they're presented so confidently and consistently that you start to doubt yourself. Jung understood that this is a deliberate psychological manipulation designed to steal your sense of personal agency and accomplishment. These friends might also project their own fears and limitations onto your situation. If they're afraid of taking risks, they'll convince you that your dreams are too risky. If they've given up on their creative aspirations, they'll suggest that your artistic pursuits are unrealistic. If they've settled for mediocre relationships, they'll plant doubts about your standards being too high. They're essentially trying to make you live within the constraints of their own psychological limitations. The fifth sign Jung observed is the comparison trap. Envious friends have an almost supernatural ability to make everything about comparison, but in ways that are designed to make you feel bad about yourself. They might constantly bring up other people who are doing better than you, or they might compare your current struggles to your past successes in ways that make you feel like you're failing, or they might compare your authentic self-expression to more conventional approaches in ways that make you feel weird or wrong. Jung noticed that these comparisons are never random. They're strategically designed to target your specific insecurities and to make you feel like your natural way of being is somehow inadequate. The goal is to get you to abandon your authentic path and conform to more conventional expectations, which would eliminate the very qualities that trigger their envy. The sixth sign Jung identified is perhaps the most revealing, the success timing pattern. Pay close attention to when these friends reach out to you and what they want to talk about. Jung noticed that envious friends have an uncanny ability to contact you right when you're experiencing a breakthrough, feeling particularly confident, or about to take an important step forward in your life. They might call with a crisis that needs immediate attention, or they might want to rehash an old problem that suddenly feels urgent, or they might need to process some drama that requires your full emotional investment. The timing isn't coincidental. Jung understood that these people have developed an almost psychic ability to sense when you're in a state of expansion or success, and they unconsciously feel compelled to interrupt that energy. This happens because your success and growth triggers their own sense of stagnation and limitation. Rather than using your progress as inspiration for their own development, they feel compelled to bring you back down to their level of comfort and familiarity. They need you to stay small so they don't have to confront their own potential for growth. Jung also noticed that these interruptions often come disguised as emergencies or urgent needs that require your immediate attention. The friend who never calls suddenly has a relationship crisis the day before your big presentation. The person who usually handles their own problems suddenly needs extensive emotional support right when you're celebrating a major achievement. The timing reveals the unconscious motivation behind the contact. The seventh sign is what Jung called the false intimacy trap. These friends create an illusion of deep connection by sharing secrets, being vulnerable about their struggles, and making you feel like you're their most trusted confidant. But Jung noticed something crucial. This intimacy only flows in one direction. They want to know everything about your inner world, your dreams, your fears, your creative projects, your relationship dynamics. But they become uncomfortable or dismissive when you try to explore their psychological depths. This false intimacy serves two purposes. First, it gives them access to information they can later use to manipulate or undermine you. Second, it allows them to feel special and chosen without actually having to do the work of genuine emotional development. They get to experience the benefits of deep connection without taking the risks that real intimacy requires. Jung discovered that truly envious friends are often fascinated by your inner world because it represents everything they wish they could access within themselves. But instead of doing their own psychological work, they try to live vicariously through your emotional and spiritual development. They become psychological tourists in your inner landscape. These friends often have an insatiable appetite for details about your personal growth journey, your spiritual practices, your therapeutic insights, or your creative process. They want to understand how you access your intuition, how you process emotions, how you make decisions, how you navigate relationships. But when you suggest that they could develop these same capacities within themselves, they become resistant, dismissive, or claim that they're just not built that way. Jung understood that this dynamic creates a parasitic relationship where one person is doing all the psychological work, while the other person benefits from the insights without contributing to the growth process. This is exhausting for the person being mined for wisdom and ultimately prevents both people from developing authentic intimacy. The eighth and most dangerous sign Jung identified is the gaslighting of your intuition. These friends have learned that your greatest strength is your ability to sense what's really happening beneath the surface of situations and relationships, so they systematically work to make you doubt this gift. They might tell you that you're being too sensitive, reading too much into things, or creating problems that don't exist. When you express concern about their behavior or point out patterns you've noticed, they respond with confusion, hurt feelings, or accusations that you're being paranoid or unfair. They've learned that if they can get you to doubt your own perceptual abilities, they can continue their subtle manipulation without resistance. Jung understood that this is the most insidious form of psychological abuse because it targets the very faculty that would normally protect you from manipulation. When you stop trusting your own intuition, you become vulnerable to all kinds of exploitation and gaslighting. Your natural psychological radar becomes compromised, and you lose access to one of your most valuable sources of information about people and situations. These friends might use phrases like, "You're overthinking this," or "You're being too emotional," or "You're imagining things that aren't there," or "You're too sensitive for your own good." They position themselves as the voice of reason, while systematically undermining your confidence in your own perceptual abilities. Jung also noticed that this gaslighting often escalates when you start to pull back from the relationship or set boundaries. The friend who has been subtly undermining your intuition will suddenly become very concerned about your mental health, your judgment, or your ability to maintain relationships. They might suggest that you're becoming isolated, paranoid, or difficult to be around. But here's what Jung discovered that can change everything. Once you understand these patterns, once you can see them clearly, they lose most of their power over you. The reason these manipulations work is because they operate below the threshold of conscious awareness. When you bring them into the light of understanding, When you can name what's happening, you reclaim your power to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. Jung also discovered something profound about why certain personality types attract this kind of envy. It's not because there's something wrong with you or because you're doing something to invite this treatment. It's because you possess psychological gifts that are both rare and valuable, and some people would rather try to diminish your light than do the work to develop their own. Your intuition, your depth, your ability to see patterns and possibilities, your emotional intelligence, your independence, your creativity, your sensitivity, your capacity for authentic self-expression. These are not character flaws that need to be fixed or toned down. They are precious gifts that the world desperately needs, but they also trigger insecurity in people who have not done their own psychological development work. Jung believed that people with strong intuitive functions serve a crucial role in society. They are the ones who can see beyond conventional thinking, who can perceive possibilities that others miss, who can understand the deeper patterns governing human behavior, who can bridge the gap between the conscious and unconscious realms. But this role also makes them targets for those who feel threatened by psychological depth and authenticity. Jung's advice for dealing with envious friends was both compassionate and firm. He believed in setting clear boundaries while maintaining your own psychological integrity. This means you don't have to cut these people out of your life completely, but you do need to protect your energy and limit their access to your most vulnerable and creative spaces. Stop sharing your dreams and goals with people who consistently respond with doubt or discouragement. Stop seeking validation from people who have a pattern of making you feel bad about yourself. Stop trying to convince people who are determined to misunderstand you. Stop explaining yourself to people who use your vulnerability against you. Your energy is precious, and Jung believed it should be invested in relationships that actually nourish your growth rather than drain your vitality. Most importantly, Jung emphasized the importance of trusting your own perceptual abilities. If something feels off about a friendship, if someone's behavior doesn't match their words, if you consistently feel worse about yourself after spending time with certain people, if your intuition is sending you warning signals about someone's intentions, trust those feelings. Your intuition is not a character flaw. It's a sophisticated psychological instrument that has evolved to protect you and guide you toward what's truly beneficial for your growth. The goal isn't to become paranoid or suspicious of everyone. The goal is to become discerning about where you invest your emotional energy and with whom you share your most authentic self. Jung believed that highly intuitive people have a responsibility to protect their gifts, not just for their own well-being, but for the sake of what they can contribute to the world. When you stop allowing envious friends to drain your energy and undermine your confidence, you free up tremendous psychological resources for creative expression, genuine relationships, and meaningful contribution. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable, and you start living from the fullness of your authentic nature. Remember, the people who truly belong in your life will celebrate your gifts, not try to diminish them. They will be inspired by your growth, not threatened by it. They will support your dreams, not plant seeds of doubt about their validity. They will encourage your intuition, not gaslight your perceptions. They will reciprocate your emotional investment, not just take from your psychological resources. These are the relationships worth cultivating and protecting. What patterns have you noticed in your own friendships? Have you experienced any of these 8 signs that Jung identified? How has recognizing these dynamics changed your approach to relationships? Share your insights in the comments below. And remember to subscribe for more content that can help you navigate relationships with greater wisdom and protect your psychological well-being.